Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. I am your host, Scott Daly, and joining me as always, my co-host and a proud soldier of the Viltrumite army, it's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Stand ready for my arrival, worm.
Thanks, man. You don't have to be mean about it.
I am so lonely.
This week on the show, we are changing things up a little bit. We had some stuff happen this week and some unforeseen things that prevented us from getting to the final film in our Oscar series, I'm Still Here. So instead, we thought we'd just get together and both chat about something that we had both been watching recently, which is the most recent season of the Amazon Prime adult cartoon. It's so weird calling it an adult cartoon, but I guess that's actually what it is.
It is weird.
Invincible. We're going to be talking about season 3 of Invincible, and I think just generally Invincible overall, because I think we were trying to think about this before we started recording, but I feel like we've briefly talked about this show on the podcast before. I think around the season 1 time, but I don't remember if we've done a full episode, and I don't think we have. So
Yeah,
we spent a little bit of time just talking about Invincible.
Right. I mean, I know that we can't have talked about season 2 because I hadn't watched season 2 until I basically watched all of season 2 and all of season 3. So
So we're going to be doing that, and it'll be complete spoilers through all 3 of the release seasons of Invincible. And then it's going to be an all TV episode because we're going to be wrapping things up with a discussion on episode 9 of Severance, The After Hours. Now, I do know that as we speak right now, the season finale of Severance is live. People are watching it right now. We are not. We've resisted, and that's going to be very difficult. But we'll be back next week to talk about the final episode of Severance and the season as a whole. So you'll have to wait for that next week. But this week we're just talking about episode 9, which by the time you're listening to this will be old news. No one cares anymore, but we care, so we're doing it.
All right,
Matt. Let's get into our main event and talk all about Invincible. Matt, what's Invincible about? Explain this to me.
It's about it's a bunch of good voice actors wrapped in a superhero show.
Well, there you go.
And the superhero show has good drama and correct balances the time that it spends on establishing and deepening character and character relationships, and then so that when the men are punching, you care who is being punched and who is doing the punching, and that's a good formula, it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, it tells the story of Mark Grayson,
yes,
a young superhero named Invincible, whose father is Omni-Man, the Superman of this world. Except, oops, not actually, because he's a bad guy.
That's right.
Or is he?
I didn't realize you wanted me to actually give a real attempt at describing the show. Yes.
Why would I not? What?
Because everyone has already seen what I've seen. Why would they need it explained? All right. Yes, that was basically the plot of season 1, right? And I think one interesting thing about Invincible is after season 1 ends, there was a big part of me that was like, that was a great show. And I never need to watch any more of it because that was like a perfectly good like arc. And I was really concerned that subsequent seasons would be, treading water or doing the classic thing where it's like, well, we gotta keep the serialized storytelling going. So let's drum up some conflict. And I mean, to an extent it does that because that's what serialized storytelling is, let's be honest. But I think that it does a pretty good job at sustaining stakes and character investment and balancing a lot of different threads. There's parts that I like more than other parts. There's a few characters that I just don't really care about. And but sure. For me overall, I think the show works actually.
Yeah. So this is, I think we should say, based off of a long running graphic novel. I believe the comic book is completed its run now. It's a finished comic book. I think that's true.
Yes, it is.
it was created by Robert Kirkman, who also created The Walking Dead. I'm pretty sure that's also a true statement. I didn't just make that up.
That
And
is.
the show was created by Kirkman, Ryan Otley, and Corey Walker. It stars. Hold on, let me take a deep breath here. Stephen Yoon, Sandra Oh, J.K. Simmons, Jillian Jacobs, Walton Goggins, Jason Mantzoukas, Zazie Beetz, Zachary Quinto, Sterling K. Brown, Ben Schwartz, Mark Hamill, Seth Rogen, Callista Flockhart, Michael Dorn, Scoot McNairy, Reginald fucking Johnson. It stars everybody, Matt. Like everyone in the world has done at least a guest appearance on this freaking show.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember who was Michael Dorn, actually. That's
Neither
fun.
do I. I was literally just going down the list and pulling out all the names that made me chuckle at the fact that they're on this. So yeah, I mean, Invincible is this really interesting animal, and that's kind of why I was like, yes, I'm actually excited to talk to you about this because, obviously the very first episode sets this really interesting tone where, for the first 56 minutes of the show, it's a fairly standard animated superhero story. And then the ending of that episode is our Superman, Omni-Man, going essentially to the Justice League and brutally murdering every single one of them. And then, we carry through the season and the consequences of all that. And then the finale of that season is Omni-Man beating the living shit out of his son, almost killing him, and then flying away. And I really feel like those two moments are so like jaw-dropping and defining for the show that the show has kind of spent the last two seasons desperately trying to like land a moment as well as those two moments land, right? Like
Yeah.
they're just so big, so holy shit. And like I don't know if the show succeeds in that, but like I think what I'll say about season 3 is I think season 3 definitely gets closer to that than season 2 does. I really didn't care for the second season of the show very much at all. I almost stopped watching. And one thing, you didn't have to experience this, but one thing season 2 did that was very strange, Matt, is they just artificially divided it in half. So the first 4 episodes came out one after another in the month of November, and then the show just stopped airing until March of the next year.
Uh-huh.
And then they came out week to week after that. And that was just this really weird break in the show that I didn't quite understand. Like it wasn't like a half season thing where we wrapped everything up and now we're going to move on to a different story half season. It was just this really abrupt break and everything. And I'm like, why are we doing this? And I had almost forgotten about everything that happened in the first half by the time we got to the second. So I really didn't like that decision. And I didn't care for, I guess one thing that surprised me is how quickly we did the face turn for Omni-Man.
Yeah.
Like it happened like the second episode of the second season. I was like, wow, really?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. I think the read you're supposed to have, I think, is that he's been struggling with doubts and
Sure.
conflict for a long time. And you could even say part of the reason why he does what he does at the end of season 1 is he's sort of trying to fight this part of himself that has that actually loves Mark and
Sure.
feels empathy for humans. So I do agree that it kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere, but I think that's the way you're meant to read the character and the choice.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I would have been stupid to think that this was not the way we were going to go with this character, that he was just going to be bad, awful, evil guy. And the show was going to be, well, now you have to kill your dad, Mark. Like, I just didn't think that was going to be where it went long term. I was just very quickly that season 2, episode 2, it was like, oh, by the way, your father's been living a whole entire new life on this other planet and he's in love with this purple fish woman.
Uh-huh.
Or whatever she is. I don't even know what she is. But
I kind of loved it because it's actually just funny. Like you realize that it shifts the way that you think about Nolan. Actually,
sure.
Like you go from thinking about him as this like, 1,000-year-old tyrant god to realizing that like he's kind of a weirdo. Like you realize how alien and alienating his existence has been and the fact that he is going, like, he's kind of having a crisis, and the crisis is kind of funny to watch, actually, because it's like, for his crisis, he becomes god emperor of a planet of bugfish, and and has a child by them, and it's like, just like his earnestness, and like, hoping that Mark will understand, and Mark just being like, you're crazy, what do you want? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, you understand where Mark's coming from, but also it's just kind of objectively funny to stand back from the situation. I enjoyed that.
Sure. I mean, I think this is a show that has like, I mean, it is a show that deals with like very high stakes drama and very, very emotional moments, but is also a show that like kind of likes to take the piss out of the characters sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is interesting how it navigates those things where it's like, it is kind of supposed to be absurd and funny that Mark, gets summoned to an alien planet, lands there, and it's like, oh, it's your dad. And he did take over a whole world, but he's good actually.
Uh-huh.
And you're just supposed to just deal with that, Mark. Just deal with it.
Yeah. It's definitely trope aware,
Yeah,
in a way that usually I think works in its favor.
yeah.
You and I were talking about this earlier, and I was thinking how, like, the one of the reasons the show works so well for me is, it dresses itself up as like a Superman show, but it's actually a Spider-Man show, because Invincible, Mark Grayson, the central character, the whole arc of, I mean, I'm sort of mentally going to merge together season 2 and season 3, honestly, because I watched them so close together. But we see a lot of this in season 3, where, Mark is literally doing the thing where he's trying to juggle being a college student, and if we include season 1 in this, and you just talk about the show as a whole, he's trying to balance being a high school or college student with the demands of needing to save the world and also keep his girlfriend happy, which is exactly a Spider-Man, right? So it's like,
Sure.
that's why everybody loves Spider-Man, is you're watching this like really deeply good-hearted kid, who you just desperately want him to win, and you're watching him just get punched in the face episode after episode and pick himself off the ground, and like, the show is just orchestrated basically to say, like, maybe we can break him if we go for this. What if his girlfriend's mad at him at the same time that his arch nemesis has kidnapped his mom, and it's just like, that's a great formula. It works on me
Yeah.
really well, at least. I there are other characters that don't work on me as well. Like, I will say, I like wanted to like Rexplode. I was like, I like this on paper. Like, this is a cool idea on paper. I don't feel anything. When he died, I felt nothing. I couldn't care
My
less.
my enjoyment of Rexplode is almost entirely related to the fact that I just love the shit out of Jason Mantzoukas, and so I like I will love anything he does in anything because I just love him as an actor and a performer so much. So
Sure.
I get that. I get that totally. I think he's kind of his season 3 journey is really interesting because he's kind of out of stuff to do, well, in some ways, and then some ways he takes giant leaps forward before exploding his skeleton and killing a alternate version of Mark. What a wild sentence there.
Uh-huh.
But it's a thing that actually happens. I agree with you on the Spider-Man comparison. I mean, I think the one exception to that is kind of season 3 that finds Mark, he's dropped out of college. He's, now he's dating Eve. They're both superheroes, so they're both very much more understanding of the demands of superhero life. But he definitely is not Superman in the fact that he gets his fucking ass kicked every episode and that ends the episode bruised and bloodied like every single time. Like, I mean, he's invincible because he always comes back, right? But Jesus, he's just gets demolished. This show does not hold back on him at all.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't hold back on anyone, but like especially Mark, I feel is just like, God damn. Like the finale of this episode is him, both arms broken,
Leg
beating a man
broken.
to death with his
Yeah.
skull.
Yeah. Right. No, I love that. I mean, we got to talk about the finale, because um the show definitely had some doldrums in the third season, where I was just kind of like, okay,
I think,
I
yeah,
I feel like the finale was just kind of a like, all right, you son of a bitch, you've won me over. But there were definitely a few episodes in there where I was like, I'm really struggling here. So
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing the show does is like it's got a shit ton of comic lore and stories to build off of. And so one thing it does sometimes is it's just like there's so many different things going on constantly. Like even I think even the finale you see that where like at the very end of the finale like the show just teleports around between all the different problems that Mark's going to have to face in the next season briefly, and it's just like stuff like that. I'm just like, oh, holy shit! There's like so much to remember of all the shit that's happening. We got the
uh,
Martian mind control aliens. We got, and that's not even counting um, Alan the alien and his war against the Viltrumites that kind of gets abandoned halfway through to deal with later. Um, I do think like the episodes 6, 7, and 8, the final three of the third season, I think is where the show like really kicked into high gear for me, and I was just really enjoying every bit of it in across the finish line. I will say there's some real Dragon Ball Z shit in the finale that started to get old for me a little bit. Like I think going from episode 7 where Mark is just fighting a bunch of versions of himself and it's just really strong people punching at each other, and then as soon as that's over with, episode 8 begins with is it Conquest is the name of the
yeah,
Viltrumite that shows up,
yeah,
and then it's again just people, two really strong people just beating the shit out of each other. Like I'm not saying that the emotion, like I agreed with what your assessment at the very beginning, that like the reason the show works is because we really grow to care about these characters, and the punching and getting the shit beat out of them becomes this outlet of showing character growth and change in a way that's really compelling and dramatic. But sometimes it's just like, this is just fucking Dragon Ball Z, and I just like move on. Can we move on to
yeah.
the next part of
I,
the conflict?
right. I mean, I think just a very specific reason why it works for me is, you'll have a couple minutes of Dragon Ball Z, and then Oliver shows up, and you're like, oh shit, Oliver, and you're like, part of you is like, maybe Oliver can help, and then you see Mark desperately trying to protect Oliver from Conquest, like correctly knowing that he doesn't stand a chance and that he's
Mhm.
probably not going to be any help. And then and then Eve shows up, and it's even worse, and you see like his reaction to that. Like that's the actual drama of the fight. It's not just you know two super beings punching each other as hard as they can. It's repeatedly throwing in the element of the people that Mark loves and cares about throwing themselves into the fight, trying to help him, and him trying to protect them, correctly. Again, knowing they can't really help, but also at the same time, he's totally outmatched too. Like, and until Eve softens him up, and then Mark discovers the secret, which is that the top of your head is the strongest part of your body. Um, uh, which is an important thing to realize if you're ever fighting a Viltrumite. Um, then he doesn't stand a chance. And
I completely agree with what you're saying. I do think like just from a runtime perspective though, like we spend a lot of time in the just people punching each other part before
Sure,
we get to the like, and I'm not even saying like I said, I enjoyed the episode. I did enjoy the episode. Um but there like I watched these last two back to back, and so it was like 2 hours of just like
yeah, yeah,
Jesus.
right,
Okay, I gotcha. They're big and strong, and they punch really hard. I got it. I got it. Can we get to the drama part? And we did, and like we did. Like the end of the episode worked on me. I think I kind of like live DM'd you the last 20 minutes of the final episode because I was like, holy shit,
yeah,
because different things kept happening that were surprising and fun and dramatic. But man, I think one thing you said to me was it was very clear that the big fight against all the Mark copies in the penultimate episode was probably an entire run of the comic book that lasted multiple issues. And the fact that they simplified that down to one 50-minute episode was like very, very intelligent, actually. Because
yeah,
I don't think like if they tried to make the like you can kind of see someone be like, we got to turn this into a whole season. the Invincible War. Yeah, that's a season of our show that would have gotten old so quickly.
Yes, I agree. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up is like apparently, and I haven't read the comics. I kind of want to read the comics actually, but apparently one of the big departures is, um, don't quote me on this. My understanding is that his mom is not nearly as much of a character in the comics,
Okay.
and that's, if you really think about that, an incredibly important change. Like
Yeah.
between all three seasons, his mom is like a major character. We spend time on her dating life. We watch scenes of her just like being sad in her house because her life sucks, and she tries to go to therapy. Some of this might be season 2. It doesn't matter. But the point is, like, yeah, she tries to go to like a group for superhero spouses, and there's
And then
all this,
everyone figures out she's the wife of Omni Man, and they all fucking hate her.
right,
'Cause
which
yeah,
which is great, right?
yeah,
uh there's a lot of stuff like that where they're very smartly giving us a lot of time on stuff that is nothing to do with punching, and
hmm
we get really invested. And like, I think it's important that she shows up briefly in that finale where she's watching this all happen on TV, and they dramatize the stakes simply by having her be like, this is definitely worse than the stuff that we've faced before. And you're like,
yeah.
yeah, it's true.
No,
um,
I love her character. You're absolutely right. Like seeing her, because I mean, it's one thing to see Mark kind of real with the truth of his father and what that means for who he is, and a lot of the show is kind of Mark battling with this version of himself that he's terrified he's becoming but doesn't want to be. And by the way, the end of the end of season 3, the conceit of season 3, as if you will, is maybe murder is good actually.
yeah.
Because like the entire basis of the beginning of the season is at the very end of season 2, Mark murders I forget the guy's name, uh the
uh
Sterling K. Brown character.
Angstrom Levy, the
Yeah, Angstrom Levy, yeah.
portal man. Yeah.
Portal Man. At the very end of season 2, he murders him, and then and then like part of what he's dealing with as he moves into season 2 is wrestling with the fact that he lost control, that he lost himself, and he became the worst version of himself, and he killed someone. And then of course we learn that no, you actually didn't. He survived somehow, despite the fact that his entire face is just completely crushed and destroyed. He portaled himself into a doctor just in time to save himself,
Uh-huh.
uh, and then comes back and then causes the worst damage to the planet than even his father did. Right.
Yeah.
So and now this is Mark. Like this is literally the the finale of the season is him going to Oliver and saying, "Hey, remember when you brutally murdered those two guys for no reason?
Right.
Good call."
Yeah.
And so you leave the character going, fuck. I don't I see his point, right? Like, but also this doesn't feel like a good place to leave this guy on his journey.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's interesting to think of him as a sort of Superman, Spider-Man like character where, um, but a really good kind of grounded version of those characters. So this is one thing I wanted to say about Invincible as a property is it has the, highly desirable quality for a Superman thing where, yeah, it's kind of like Spider-Man. Yeah, it's kind of like Superman. But the main way that it's not like either of those things is it's not beholden to 90 years of comics, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not beholden to rules like you can't kill this character and you have to do this thing. And he's just free to be a character. He's free to do whatever Invincible would do in that situation.
Yeah.
And that is way more interesting because, furthermore, so I kind of know where the story goes. I'm not going to spoil anything, obviously. So that's not the point of me bringing this up. It's just like, because of YouTube, I kind of know where the story goes. And it's like, yeah, because it's allowed, much like Worm, honestly, like, because it's just us. This is the story. It's not part of it's not part of a universe. It doesn't have to, we'll make sure you can't do this because we'll mess up the continuity. It's like, no, this is the story. This is the whole story. So you can you can go in surprising directions with that story, and you can do kind of wild things with that story, and not have to, bring everything back to normal at the end of the season, because it's not part of a greater universe. And I think that works in the show's favor quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I will say though, like they still really feel hesitant to kill characters off, because I swear to God, people have died like 6 times and then just been okay. Like
Yeah,
when at the end of season 2, when all like the lizard team, I forget what the lizard team is called, but when they like invade, and you think Rexplode is dead, you think the shrinking girl's dead, you think um the duplicate is dead, like it's like you're just like holy fuck, and then next season it's like just kidding to all of those things. Everyone's fine actually. Like there's a part of me that still thinks Rexplode is actually okay. Maybe he just can explode his skeleton and then build
yeah,
a new one and he'll actually be fine. um it does, like even like that big fight with like the dragon gangster guy, which I think was my least favorite episode, by the way, um of the season at least. Like even he's not dead at the end of that episode, and it's like Jesus, like are we
yeah,
who dies in this, like ever? um
yeah. Right. I
which is
I
really interesting in a show that set the stakes of the show in the first episode by killing off the Justice League, and they were all super dead actually. Well, not all of them. One of them's named the Immortal, so he doesn't die ever.
yeah.
Or does he? He does in the future,
He,
right?
he does thousands of years later, but
Yeah.
maybe it's a different him. I don't know. Yeah, no, I simply agree with you. Actually, I wish, like, I wish that those characters had just stayed dead. I, or maybe just kill one or two of them. Don't kill all three. If you can't,
Yeah.
if you can't afford to get rid of the character, then don't tease us like that, because then it actually just reduces our sense of investment. This is yeah, it's funny because I feel like I contradict myself when I talk about the show, because certain elements of it work on me fantastically. Like I really thought, like everything with his mom, everything that touches his mom,
Yeah.
like Oliver, Nolan,
Oliver stuff, man.
like
It's so good. Like
yeah,
I can't believe how good. Like I was so indifferent to, oh, we have a purple weird alien son.
uh,
I rolled my eyes so hard at that, and yet everything, it's so good, and it's because of the mom character that
yeah.
makes all this really really good.
It's because of the mom character, and you buy that, like, why is Mark different? Why is every Mark variant a psychopath except for this one? And it's I don't know that the show ever actually says this, but you're strongly inclined to be like, well, it's because of his mom. It's because he had this grounding, this loving presence who taught him how to be a person,
Yeah.
and prepared him so well, in fact, that when Nolan tried to turn him to evil, it just wasn't gonna fly.
Mhm.
And then there's stuff like gosh, the roughest part of the show for me, honestly, I don't know if you feel the same, but basically the whole team, Rexplode and Shrinking Girl and Duplicate, I don't care about these characters. I just don't care. I don't even know why exactly, because I don't like, it's not like I dislike them. I'm just like, uh I'm just bored. I don't know. I wish I had a better explanation for this. I mean, if they're your favorite characters, let me know, because
No, I mean, I like and dislike them to various degrees throughout the course of the show. I mean, I will agree that like in season 3, I think their plot line was the least interesting to me. I mean, I appreciated like the stand against Cecil when half of them quit the GDA and go
yeah.
off to form team again.
Uh-huh.
So stupid. Um, so like I appreciated that, but then like I often felt like with the there's parts that like I think are interesting, like intellectually, like the robot being the kid and his relationship with Beast Girl or whatever, like is I feel like on paper should be interesting,
Uh-huh.
but I just really don't care about it very much.
I
Um,
think that work. I think Monster Girl and Robot work better than the rest of the team, which is, I
yes,
guess,
yes,
subliminally why I didn't include them in that list. But even they, I'm just kind of not in. I mean, I don't know. It's weird because it's like, is it as simple as I'm just really into Mark Grayson and whatever Mark Grayson is up to and his family, and
I
I'm
mean,
kind of annoyed when you distract me from that. I don't know. I,
it's like it to me it's this when the show feels the most like it's a comic book is when we break off from the main action to focus on some other stuff. It just feels like, oh, this is just a one-off issue that focused on someone else, right? And I feel like that functions better in comics than it does in TV sometimes. At least in the way this TV show is designed, it does. um because yeah, it's like this incredible dramatic high stakes stuff going on with Mark and with Oliver and at the things that are coming. Well, like, and I keep going back to the gangster episode because, like, man, I just didn't care about any of that
Mhm.
whatsoever. Like machine face versus machine mouth, and like I just didn't care. I really didn't care.
Yeah, it felt like in anime we call it a filler episode where it's just like
Yeah.
this is non-canonical and
They have that term for non-anime too. Like that's in television we call it a
oh
filler episode.
oh wow, so y'all took that
Yeah.
from anime. That's fascinating. um, no, it's I mean it's funny because while I 100% agree with you that Dragon Man episode felt kind of like filler. I didn't actually hate that episode. I just was sort of like, this is popcorn, you know. I did like the one where he goes to the future and has to confront Immortal, and I think that's because it like mattered more to him, like because in that episode, there's sort of this. The first half of the season is sort of Mark struggling a lot with just like dealing with bad stuff happening and um feeling like he's a burden on the people around him, and then like trying to mitigate that, and then like something else happens again and it just kind of like resets him back to where he was before. And it's this very, I mean, it's frustrating to watch on one level, but also it's powerful drama. You care,
Mm-hmm.
you care that this is happening to him even if you're frustrated. um like there's several episodes in a row. Actually, okay, let me make a broader claim actually, which is like the show actually does the rare thing where it like shows us why he should be with Adam Eve, which is that like they understand each other and she is actually there for him in a meaningful way and he is actually there
Mm-hmm.
for her in a meaningful way, because like we see how he's not getting that kind of support from Amber. And you know, this is not going to be our 2 minutes hate on Amber. It's simply that the show positions Amber not as like the worst person in the world, just like a person who's trying to live her own life and doesn't have the wherewithal or skills or energy or desire particularly to be part of this world. And how like that just makes everything worse for him because he's trying to make this thing work with her. And every time he does the superhero thing that he knows he should be doing, it just makes him more miserable, because it costs him his relationship. And then finally in this season, we, you know, in a real way gets together with Eve. And you see how that, I don't know, like it just felt like for a, you know, silly punching people cartoon. I felt like it was like a good job at doing the relationship stuff. Like I really was invested in that actually.
Yeah, and Eve brings her own baggage to everything too. Like I really love Eve's. I do find Eve's father like over the top
Yeah, yeah.
in his. It's a race. Can't call it racism. Like his ism, whatever his
Uh-huh.
ism is. It's just kind of absurd and over the top, but in a way that fits with the show sometimes. Um, and so like I love her struggle with that and what she brings to the relationship. Like I was very much like in the first season I was like, yeah, him should get together, to the point where like when he does actually get together with Amber I was kind of bummed about it, and then I found myself really liking Amber a whole lot, and then I was kind of bummed when that didn't happen, and then when it first did the Eve thing I kind of rolled my eyes at it at first. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, oh really, we're just like he's just getting together with the crush. That's boring. But no, I think it ultimately does work, and I think that the show does take efforts to make that kind of thing feel earned. I think the flip side of that is Rexplode with the shrinking person whose name I can't even remember, where I was really just like, are we really doing that? Really? Like that it just didn't feel like those two characters would like each other at all.
Yeah, and then it just seemed like we didn't because they like barely had a date and then he blows up and
Yeah.
I honestly like I wish I felt something about that. I feel like for a show that works so well at most of the things that it's trying to do, I wish that I cared about that. Um,
Mhm.
I wonder like what is the missing element here that I needed for that to work for me. I don't have a good answer.
Yeah.
Because you know when Eve is getting pulverized by Conquest, you're definitely feeling something. Uh, yeah, I just want to talk about the Conquest fight for another second because like
I mean, let's
when I
talk about
say
20 minutes.
yeah, because like when I say it landed, when I say like that kind of brought the season around for me, I really did think that was kind of excellent, and it wasn't just like all right, people really liked the season one finale, let's just run that one back. It did share some elements with it where it's a Viltrumite beating the shit out of Mark, but like it's also kind of playing off of things that happened there where Mark has gone through 2 seasons of, let's call it, character growth, even though some of it may not actually be positive, where he has become more brutal. He's more desperate. He's more aware of the stakes. He's not just this kid who's caught off guard, who's sort of like begging his dad for help. He knows he's not going to be able to talk Conquest out of anything,
Mhm.
and um, he's being more resourceful and desperate in how he fights. The voice acting is a thing that I want to harp on, just talk about endlessly, particularly Stephen Yoon. I don't actually know how to pronounce that, but like he's like the high, like the show almost doesn't work without him portraying both like the vulnerability of this kid who's wrapped up in all this stuff, and then really hitting the high points like in this finale when he's just losing his absolute mind um over the things that are happening around him and almost losing his love of his life, and then headbutting a guy to death and just like this like primal scream that he does. You're just like that's what sells it, right?
Yeah.
um 100% the voice acting in that scene.
Yeah, I mean, there were definite parts where I thought we were just trying to desperately recapture the finale of season 1. I mean, like he literally like flies Invincible through a crowd of people in the exact same way his dad did in the first season. But yeah, I mean, I think it becomes quickly apparent that that is intentional echoing, because yeah, we're trying to show it's been 2 years, or well, I don't know, it's been 2 seasons. Um, how has this kid changed from this point?
Yeah.
And almost like the shock and horror for Mark as he's watching this thing happen to him again, and he's powerless to stop it again. And like he's watching, like, especially to come after the Aaron Paul episode, which I do want to spend some time talking about eventually. But I think that does kind of set the stage for everything that happens in the next 2 episodes, because he's seen what these big giant battles of his, what the consequences that they have, and then now we're forced to go through it again here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you on the voice acting. Great stuff. Obviously, they did a little bit of stunt casting here, because Jeffrey Dean Morgan plays Conquest, Stephen Yoon plays Invincible. Those are two actors who were also in another Kirkman adaptation, The Walking Dead, and in that one, Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Negan smashes uh, Stephen Yoon's Glenn in the head with a bat. It's one of the most well-known moments from that show and comic, and also the point where I stopped watching, actually.
Uh-huh.
So that's a long story that I don't want to fully get into, but it was one of the most frustrating moves that the show has ever done to me. um but like, when they cast Jeffrey Dean Morgan, they essentially knew that they were going to be reversing that, right? Like,
Right.
now, yes, Invincible does not use a bat, but he does smash Jeffrey Dean Morgan's head in pretty
Right.
good, using his own head. He uses the bat that we all have on our forehead.
Yep.
So I mean that's fun stunt casting, but they like outside of that, they both do incredible jobs with their characters. And yeah, I mean Stephen Yeun is great. I sent you earlier. They did greenlight season 4 of the show recently, and they like posted a picture that was like Invincible returned for season 4, should be sometime in 2026. Voice acting is complete. Um, a character that I don't know has been cast. Invincible has also been cast, and like there's a lot of people that are like, what does that mean? Are we getting a new voice actor? And I think what we concluded was that's just the show's marketing being a little tongue in cheek, which they do
Uh-huh.
often. Because yeah, of course, like you cannot take this character away from Stephen Yeun. He embodies it so perfectly that it just like the show would be destroyed without him.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Again, he makes the show. And I enjoyed the stunt cast. I mean, it's funny because um, I think the first time I saw Conquest and I heard Conquest's voice, I don't even know if I was aware of the stunt casting thing. And part of me was like, that voice doesn't sound like it should be coming out of an 8 foot tall man who looks like he weighs about 600 pounds of pure muscle. It just doesn't quite fit for me. Like this, that's who Michael Dorn should be voicing. Um, but but very quickly he won me over with the character, because like the thing about voice acting, especially in cartoons, is it's like doesn't really need to make sense. I just need to buy the interiority and buy the character as a character, and I did. I like, especially when they do the when they do the I'm so lonely, and like it doesn't
Oh my god.
it makes it such a more interesting scene. Like, imagine how different the fight would feel just without that simple moment. It really
Yeah.
would be a lot more just sort of like I roll DBZ stuff, honestly. Like, and I would be agreeing with you a lot more that like, oh, it was kind of a we've seen this before sort of fight, if they didn't have that and other, I think, other touches here and there, but just this little monologue he gives and then take it to your grave. It's just perfect. Uh,
Yeah, it's such a great wrinkle on the character who, like, up until that point, we just know him as kind of weird, incredibly strong magic arm man. And
uh-huh.
then, like, yeah, just like that whole monologue of like, not even my own people want to talk to me because I'm the one that gets to do all the terrible jobs. And every time I like, it's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Um, how did you feel about the Adam Eve reveal, I guess we'll call it? Like it's just it's just Phoenix
Yeah.
from X-Men.
Right. Well, she's Phoenix. I mean, we've got a lot of that. We've got a lot of that, and it's very self. I mean, Rexplode is Gambit, right? Like
Sure.
everybody's
Yeah.
everybody's a riff on something, and the
Yeah, but
show is
that's
pretty.
not even a riff. That's like the arc of they put mental blocks in my brain because
Uh-huh.
it was too powerful. Um and sometimes I can get around, like that's exactly what happens to Jean Grey in the Phoenix Saga, like exactly. And it's like that's not even like a reference or a throwaway. That's just it.
Yeah.
And sometimes this stuff like this is the frustrating part of the show to me often is like I think it's so moving and so wonderfully dramatic, and I feel and I love the characters. And then there's stuff like this where I'm just like, really? We're just gonna do that? That's just what we're doing?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there honestly was a part of me like when Eve died, there was a part of me that was like, "Oh, holy shit," and I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
But then there was a part of me that was like, "All right, respect.
Yeah.
Respect, show. I did not see that coming."
Right.
And then again, to reverse it like they do with every fucking death in the show was just like I mean, it was a cool moment. Like I just agree, like objectively it was a cool moment where she just heals herself and then fires a giant beam that cooks Jeffrey Dean Morgan's skin off. Like, yeah, that was neat. But there was a part of me that was like, oh, that kind of what is does death mean anything in the show?
Right. I agree. I just agree that, I mean, I'm sure, you can't you can't just kill off your characters. Then what would you do? Yeah, I mean, I basically, look. I'm going to talk about Worm for a second because it's sort of like a super obvious connection where
Sure.
I think like the right way of doing this is something much closer to like the idea of a second trigger where
Mm.
you have built into the setting this idea that like it's a Chekhov's gun leading to a Deus Ex Machina where you have prepared me for the idea that there is a wild card that can be pulled out in desperate
Mm.
circumstances that can potentially save the day. But you've also prepared me for the idea that you really don't want to have to pull this particular wild card, and then you attach a cost to it essentially. And that's how that is employed in Worm, where there is the moment in Worm where somebody is in a situation where it's like, oh, there's no way they'll survive this, and then they do, but it doesn't feel like, oh, I guess death doesn't mean anything. It feels like, oh my god, it would have been better if he died. Um, and you and about 90% of our listeners know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Um, but but when you just get out of the death scot free, you're right. It's just like, oh, okay, so nothing matters. I think you're just right about that.
Yeah, and of course the show could surprise me and make this matter and be an emotional part of her story and their story going forward. I think that's just probably true, right? But yeah, in the moment you just feel a little bit of disappointment, and that's not what I want to feel in that moment, right? That's the exact opposite of the feeling I want to feel in that moment. Um,
Yeah,
but but it was, I mean, I there was a part where I thought he was really going to just rip Oliver in half too. I was like, oh, okay,
yeah,
that's surprising.
yeah. Right. I guess I mean, if you put it that way, it's almost interesting that it works on me as well as it does because there are so few actual long term consequences. Um, you would think that it wouldn't work so well, but I think the reason it works well, I think I'm a simple man, Scott. I I I just need to believe that the characters are feeling things. And if I believe that the characters are feeling things and I sort of like believe them enough as a character that they are kind of living in my brain, then that's all I need. So in that moment, Mark Grayson is afraid that his little brother is going to be ripped in half. In that moment, Mark Grayson thinks that his love has just been killed in front of his eyes. Then the fact that we take it all back, yes, it does diminish things, but in that moment, I'm with Mark, and that's kind of almost all I need, actually.
Yeah. No, I mean, I even joke to you that like, oh, we're doing a Marco Super Saiyan mode actually, which is not true, but not exactly what ends up happening.
Yeah,
I mean, I do like just structurally the idea that his girlfriend being horribly murdered is actually not enough to, he still would have lost, right?
right,
Like he would have watched his girlfriend die and then just died himself.
right,
Um, like I think that's actually a better outcome than just, oh no, like we fridge Eve and then he reaches down and comes up with a little extra power reserve. Like Conquest was stronger than him. He was
right.
better than him. He was like, he should have won
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah, totally. I did like the sort of setup payoff instantly of Conquest, sort of making fun of him, saying you don't get stronger when you get angry, and then Mark replies to this by biting a huge chunk out of Conquest's trap, and and
Yeah.
and it's like that's like it's true that you don't get stronger, but you see that Mark is getting more vicious. That's not something season one Mark would have even thought of doing. But he's fighting more like a Viltrumite. He's fighting animalistically,
Yeah.
and ruthlessly. Like the headbutting someone to death is is gross
Yeah.
and like not honorable, right? Like Superman never kills anyone, but if Superman was going to kill someone, he would like it would look very honorable and cool. It would not look
Yeah.
like him straddling them and bashing them with the top of the skull. Um, uh, yeah, uh, yeah,
So
great.
can we take a step back and just be like, okay, what are we doing here? Actually, though, because
Yeah,
like a through line of this season in particular has been this thing that Cecil says in the episode where we learn his past, which I thought was great, by the way. I really enjoyed seeing this, getting to see young Cecil and how young Cecil turned into the man we haven't before us, who repeats the phrase. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's like, good guys don't save the world or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, like,
That
I, I
you
wish.
can be a good guy or you can save the world, I guess.
Yeah,
Something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
That's what it is, and that seems to be this recurring beat throughout the season, right? Because that is essentially Mark's transformation over the course of the season as well, is realizing that the things that feel morally right in the moment, which is we shouldn't kill people, killing should be an absolute last resort. Um, eh, we should keep control of ourselves and not lose control. Like, that seems to be the exact opposite lesson that he learns by the end of it. Like, he's tossed that aside. And like I said, I feel conflicted about that. Like, and I think the show wants you to feel conflicted about it. Like, we've seen this version of Mark Invincible as emperor of the world, right? We saw it both through all the other marks that came from different universes, and then we saw it when he travels to the future, and we learn that that he is the one that put the immortal in charge of Earth when he left, because he was the emperor of Earth and he put immortal in charge. So we've seen this outcome for Mark. It's been telegraphed for us, and so there is this concern that I felt leading through all these episodes of, like, he's everything that happens to him, every moment that he's forced into this situation is baby stepping him towards that eventuality. And is that I'm so conflicted about this, because the show does a very good job of showing that he was right. Like if he had just killed, what's his name, um Portal Man, like, millions of people would have lived.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting how this actually is an idea that is kind of central to the Avengers. Captain America Civil War is probably the one where it is most in the forefront, where
Sure.
it's like, look, if you're going to give us the responsibility of being the one, like the only ones who can save the world, basically, then you've got to give us the responsibility of being the only ones who can save the world, meaning like both sides of that equation. You've got to let us actually make the calls
Mm.
and give us the leeway to make the calls that we think are the right calls, not just treat us like you can order us. And I always think it's interesting that it's Captain America, the Boy Scout, who takes that side of the argument, right? Whereas I think if you were just thinking it through, you might expect that Captain America would be the one who would say, like, yeah, so we should listen to the government, of course. But then
Well, he's had the opportunity of seeing fascistic governments that he would not want to be a part of. So
exactly, and I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. It's just that's the way in which we can look at this and say, like, yeah, like there's a good case to be made. There's a reasonable case to be made that, like, if you're the only one who can save Earth, which is essentially the position we put Mark in, where he's just simply the strongest champion of Earth,
yeah.
then he actually has to make really tough calls. Like, if there is a guy who is super bad and wants to kill lots of people, you
Mm.
don't have the luxury of putting him back in Arkham Asylum, once a month so that he can escape again. You better just cut his head off with the edge of your hand, which is so badass. But I think it's so yeah. You open up saying, where are we going with this, and I think it's like trying to be a mature take on the idea that, like, what happens to Spider-Man after a few years of being Spider-Man, actually. Like, this is why Spider-Man stories always tread water, and like, you just eternally have Spider-Man in college, trying to date Mary Jane. Like, that's like always the most interesting part of the story, because it's like hanging in the balance. there's
Yeah.
there's a question. It's like once he's got Mary Jane and once he's he's just fully Spider-Man and realized his his role. It's like, well, okay, now what though? Like you're just going to keep doing this specific thing. Like if you actually care about helping people, you would do something other than put the lizard back in prison again. You would think of some other solution to this problem other than just punching supervillains all day.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe it's sort of like wishful thinking, or on some level, like this is what I would do if I was, a superhero. Is like I'd like try to find the root cause and try to make it not be a problem anymore. Um,
Yeah. I mean, there's this also interesting other through line throughout everything. I think that it's there's this wordless opening of that one episode. I forget which episode it is, where we see the two men in the relationship, who are struggling financially. Um, you know, rob a bank, fail, barely get away, try to make ends meet without the life of crime, eventually find their way back to a life of crime, and then bump into Mark and Oliver, and you really feel for these people because the movie or the show takes the time to show you these are just regular people that are suffering and that turn to bad things in order to make it to survive. You have that idea. And so when our superhero that we love like starts fighting them, you're kind of like, hey, leave him alone, man,
yeah,
leave him alone. And then in episode 6, the Aaron Paul episode, which is an entire episode about the consequences of Mark even existing, and how individual people's lives can be absolutely destroyed by this guy. I don't know where to put these things,
yeah,
because like the conclusion of that episode is like this man loses his mind and kills his wife and child, and Mark takes responsibility for that. He says that's his fault too. And so there's a part of me that's like, no, Mark, that wasn't your fault. Yeah, the first one, it wasn't your fault either. You were trying to save those people. But it is just true when you're flying around punching someone as hard as you can, like Dragon Ball Z, like you're killing people.
yeah.
And like I guess I think it's a really some really interesting, profound questions. Like I think that the worm comparison is so apt, because like deconstruction of the genre questions that the show is asking, and I'm just wondering if the show has like the cojones to come to a conclusion on some of these things.
Uh-huh.
like it is the final run of however long this show is going to last. Are we going to come to a conclusion on like the idea of Mark and how his existence in this world and what it means ultimately?
Yeah, I guess I'll refrain from speculating because I do kind of know um,
Sure.
some of the answers to those questions. But I I guess I'll just go so far as to say, like, from what I have read, I am interested in continuing to watch because um, I feel like you know this guy is a good writer. Like he understands what he's doing, and I really do think it's a deconstruction. Like you said, I don't think he's just kind of saying, "Well, I want to do my own paint by numbers version of Spider-Man or Superman, or mash the two together." And like I think there's a direction that he has in mind. I think there's an arc
Mhm.
that he has in mind for this character, and it's really hard to execute an arc over the course of many seasons because what you've got to really do to make that work is you've got to have a bunch of little arcs, right? You've got to, like, each season kind of has to have its own arc, uh, and those arcs have to chain together to build into a large, show length arc. Uh, Notoriously hard to do, and the shows that land that tend to be like the best things that we remember for the rest of our lives. Um, and I hope that this show can pull it off because I've basically been on this train with Mark Grayson since the beginning, and like that's what I'm into. I want to see what is he going to decide, what is he going to do next. Is he going
Yeah.
to is he going to make the right choice, or what is the right choice? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I do just generally enjoy the show. I will say, like, one thing we haven't talked about is the animation, which I think is pretty bad is the wrong word. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's like the weakest part of the show is the actual the things we're looking at. The animation, I think, is just kind of cheap animation, kind
Y-
of.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is like a big hot topic that people love to argue about, and I don't really know anything about animation, so I'm not gonna. I don't even have like a position on this. I basically feel the same way as you, where I'm like, this very often looks cheap,
Mhm.
and I think it was funny. I was just literally just noticing this today. I was like, I think a big part of the problem is that I'm watching this on a giant TV in my living room,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
like, you know, all of the other sort of quote unquote cartoons I've watched in my life were made for a, you know, 24-inch at most, you know, CRT television, um, that like does all of these nice like fuzzing things where they make like the TV itself makes the image look richer by virtue of the fact that it's sort of grainy and fuzzy in an aesthetically pleasing way.
Mhm.
Whereas this show unfortunately suffers because like you can see all of the lines. And you can every line is crisp and it look, you know, it's like I made the mistake of watching the finale, you know, more than once. And when you watch something more than once in close succession, you like notice errors, and like my eyes would catch little animation errors, um,
Mhm.
which again I probably wouldn't have even like been detectable on a smaller TV, or on a smaller CRT TV, I guess I should say. So I think that's I bring this up because it's like, yeah, we've actually moved into a world where I think having good animation is actually way harder than it was when we were kids. Um, like like there's some cool moments, there's some well animated moments in the show, but I think when those come up, they actually just sort of like distract you because you're just aware that we were just watching like something that was really not that great actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. I think ultimately though, like it's not a deal breaker. Like I agree with you. I see people like kind of constantly complain about this online, and I just like I don't care. Like it's like the animation is not what I'm getting from the show. Actually, like the show is working on me on levels that make me not really care that the animation is just fine.
yeah.
Um, and so I just move on. I will say I don't love. This is so weird. I don't love Invincible's new costume,
Uh-huh.
which is weird because I distinctly remember when Invincible put on the first costume, I was like, "That's awful. That's the dumbest costume I've ever seen," and I hated it. And then I got used to it, and now he changed it, and I was like, "I don't like this one."
Uh-huh.
So I'm just impossible to please, I guess.
You are. No, I think it's meant to be like, you know, we're sort of going on the black suit Spider-Man arc, sort of. Not really, because it's not like Mark became evil, but he's definitely
Mhm.
struggling with a lot of darkness in his life. Like I I I think one refrain I kept noticing in the season is just like every time he sees Eve, he's like sad and crying, and everyone is always sad and crying,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, you know, Eve is a better girlfriend for you, Mark, but like you can't always just be dumping your shit on her. And I was actually expecting the show to like acknowledge this, that like sort of acknowledge the fact like, hey, every time Mark sees Eve, he's telling her about his problems again,
Yeah.
to the point where I was like, even Eve, who, you know, yes, does like understand this better than most people, being a superhero, like there's a limit to that. Like there's got to be a balance. There's got to be a some amount of it can't just go on like that, you know. And this especially with the way that the season ends, I didn't feel like we got any closure there. I mean, maybe I'm off base and this isn't even what I was supposed to be feeling. Like maybe the show wants us to think like it's good that she's just there to listen to him. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Like I don't have a very confident feeling about the future of this relationship because I like I do feel like, and it's like, it's not to minimize the shit that Mark is going through, because obviously, holy shit, man. But yeah, he does, like, absolutely immediately, like, turns her into his dumping ground for
Yeah,
all the shit he's going through. And it's like, yeah, like, kind people, like, will be willing to do that for people, but they have their limits. And
yeah.
eventually, if that's all the relationship is let me just talk to you about my problems and you make me feel better, um that's not gonna fly in the long term.
Yeah, I think I just expected the show to be more explicit about that because and it's I'm not even saying like, oh, this is Mark's fault, because like there's the episode where he's on the date and then the people come from the future and bring him to the future where he has to kill has to mercy kill Immortal, and then he comes back and he's just like really depressed. And I'm not saying like what he should have done there is just not been
Not
depressed.
been depressed, yeah,
Right,
yeah,
it's like, no, it's understandable. It's just the show has constructed a situation where regardless of the fact that it's understandable, it's also not sustainable.
yeah,
Something has to be different for that to work.
yeah, I agree. All right, anything else you wanted to say about Invincible? Pretty good
No,
show.
I feel like you said something about wanting to talk about Jesse Pinkman's involvement, but I don't know if we got to that. But that was
I
all I
mean, we
was.
talked briefly about the episode, which I felt very conflicted about. Like, in many ways, I really, really liked it. I liked the emotionality of it, and this poor, horrible, tragic character. Um, I love his power, and as a reflection of kind of what he's going through. Of like, this world is like beating me, and I'm just gonna punch back. And the
Yeah.
more it punches me, the harder I'm gonna punch back. I think all that stuff's very effective, and I
Hmm.
was moved by the episode. It took me way too long to recognize Aaron Paul's voice for some reason. Is it like the second you know it's Aaron Paul, you're like, oh yeah, duh. But
Yeah.
I was just sitting here like, who is that? Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
he's going full Aaron Paul the whole time.
yeah,
His
that's very
knob
true.
is turned all the way to the right.
Yeah, that's very true. Um, I don't know if I feel bad for him, as like, he's just he's just going to be playing Jesse Pinkman for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I don't know. I I imagine that he's content with his situation.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting work, right? So
Yeah, right, right.
sure. Can't believe he didn't call anyone a bitch or something in the episode.
Feel like they actually the show kind of, even though it definitely does stunt casting, I think that it carefully avoids doing the like obvious thing that you're going to roll your eyes
Yeah.
at. You know?
Can I say the one thing that I thought was stupid and yeah, tonally incongruous with the show? Like we said, the show likes to be tongue in cheek. The show likes to have fun. The show likes to be silly. I mean, like, Seth Rogen's Alan the Alien character is just it's just Seth Rogen. It just is.
Yeah,
But so the show likes to do the thing where it has the Invincible intro, where a character says the name, and then instead of actually playing the audio of saying the name, we cut to just the title card. And in this Aaron Paul episode, where he is like crying and screaming out in pain about what he feels is Invincible's ability to get away with taking his loved ones away from him, the show decides that it's going to do this thing where every time he says Invincible throughout the entirety of the sequence, it's going to cut to the title card. And it just keeps doing it again and again and again. And it's like, that's a fun joke. I just think this moment was the worst possible moment to do that in. It's just like, this is a very dramatic, heartbreaking thing for this character. And like, this is when we're going to be tongue in cheek and tell the joke right now. That felt weird to me.
sure. I don't disagree. Um, Thought that was, you know, for a show that I think normally does sort of give space to the dramatic moments. That was a rare sort of miss, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, but that is Invincible. Season 4 is coming. Maybe we'll circle back around after the end of season 4 and talk about that more. I forgot who like the lion guy in space was, so I don't know what that means.
It's
It's like,
Battle
oh,
Beast,
cool,
man.
he's alive.
He's real strong. He's Battle Beast.
Is he on our team?
He just wants to fight strong dudes. So
So no.
depends.
Guess we can push him towards the bad guys, maybe,
Maybe.
since he's out floating in space.
Let's try it.
Okay, we'll try it.
All
Do
right.
do 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 doof.
All right, Matt. Before we go, let's talk Severance. For the second to last time this year, we're going to talk all about Severance. So, episode 9, I think in many ways, is exactly what I wanted the show to do for me. You know, we talked last week about how I really felt episode 8 was a weak point for the season, and really wanted to be back with our characters we know. Really want to be back in the situations with our characters we know. And this episode gave that to us, right? We get to see all of our innies again. Well, except for Irving for obvious reasons, but
Yeah.
and yet, I was also incredibly frustrated by this episode. What did you think of it?
So, I mean, once again, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers, and I enjoyed this episode just like I enjoyed the last one. I felt like this was a first of all, I think your opinion is one that I've heard before, that this episode was frustrating, and I even know your reasons and empathize with them, but like, to me, this episode just kind of felt like a season 1 episode, which is a compliment in my mind, where it's kind of like the second season has been a lot more elevated, and you know, a lot of its episodes have been very artsy. It's been, you know, a lot more sort of weird totemic imagery stuff, and this episode was much more of just like, oh, mysteries and weirdness and drama and characters doing things, and like a season 1 episode that, like, so again, I take the good with the bad, is what I'll say there. No, I liked it.
I think you have the exact right attitude towards the show, and I so desperately wish I could be you sometimes. But I mean, like, it's so interesting because, like, in the micro, so many of the moments and indeed so many of the episodes this season have been things that I've been like, yeah, I loved this. Like Chikai Bardo, I loved that episode. I truly did, and I've loved so much of this season. But like, I feel the show losing me. That's like, I feel that happening to me over the course of the season. When I look at the season as a whole, there's like things that I'm just like, why are we doing it this way? Like, and it's really frustrating me, and it's causing like an emotional disconnect with the characters. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, Bert and Irving's like lovely departure at the end of this season or episode, I felt nothing. I didn't. I didn't feel. I felt no emotion about that scene at all. I know, like, intellectually, these are two characters. One of them is deeply repressed, and they feel something for each other that they don't fully understand, or at least one of them doesn't fully understand. But also, these aren't the people that had a relationship with each other, actually. And like, that's just the construction of the show, and it leaves me so removed from it. Also, why isn't anyone asking Irving why he's spying on Lumen? Like, can't we have that? Maybe please have that conversation too. Maybe
I
just
want to
briefly,
I
real
want to hit
quick.
both. I want to hit both of those points, and I'm going to jump on it so I don't forget. So as to the first one, I think it's interesting because the show has spent 2 seasons teaching us what you just said, which is these are 2 different people. So we're not watching, you know, Irv and Bert. We're watching Irving and Bert. They're effectively different characters because the show taught us that, right? But like, I feel like maybe the show in a moment like that is asking us to presuppose, what if they're not? Like what if we're being too dogmatic about the innie outie, you know, dichotomy, and maybe, you know, Irving in particular, I think we have some textual reason to believe there's been an unusual amount of bleed through between his innie and his outie due to how he's been like sleep depriving himself and so on. So that didn't bother me so much. I heard this take before that like the fact that they were different characters made it dramatically inert. And to me, I was like, well, I think I've opened to the idea that like maybe they're not really fully 100% separate characters. Okay, so that's my take on that. And then as to the
yeah, I agree 100%. But it's just like that's so much like work
uh-huh.
to work through that in your mind that it again just like I agree with it intellectually. I emotionally do not feel it in the moment.
Sure, I can understand that. And then I think I more agree with you just straightforwardly on the second part where and on saying this episode is frustrating where there are multiple occasions in this episode. I think you're going to mention the other occasion where you have characters who really it would make sense for them to share information, to say things, and they don't. And I have always felt like this show did a good job at not making that mistake.
Yep.
So it's really frustrating when you're like, you know better than this.
Yeah, I mean, this is we're of course talking about when Cobell gets with Mark Scout, and then does the fucking, and I know I've used this comparison so many times, I'm going to do it here again, does the fucking Khan thing where in Star Trek Into Darkness, the character reveals his name is actually Khan, and the movie holds on that reveal, but nobody in the fucking movie knows who Khan is.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a completely emotionally meaningless reveal. She goes, Cold Harbor. And Mark's just looking at her like, what?
Uh-huh.
Except he doesn't say what? He doesn't say, what does that mean? He doesn't say, what do you mean if I finished Cold Harbor, my wife's already dead? Why? What is that? None of these things happen. They just carry on with the next scene. And I'm just like, the problem is, it's not that, I think we build this as like the frustration is when a character who knows everything is in communication with a character who doesn't know anything, and why aren't they trading information? Like there's a way to get out of that situation, which is that like you just make it so there's a character reason for why they wouldn't do that. And I can believe that there's a character reason for Harmony Cobell why she would not feel comfortable divulging the entire long history of Secrets of Lumen to Mark in this point. What I don't believe is that Mark would carry on with what they're doing without getting any sort of information from her first. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying every little bit and every nook and cranny of the explanation, but even just a scene where he like pushes her a little bit on what she knows and what's going on and what do you mean Cold Harbor, and just like even just a little bit of that. But it really just felt like we're not ready to do that. That's a season finale thing, so we're just going to move past it. And I just don't believe Mark would do that. I don't.
Right. I mean, I do think the writing in this season it's more strained than the first season. Like the first season had a clear destination that it needed to get us to, and that destination allowed us to keep our mystery boxes closed. And it as more time passes, it becomes strained keeping the mystery boxes closed, especially when people know things that they should say. Like this is this is just exactly what my problem with Lost was, where people would not specifically the idea that they wouldn't communicate with each other, although that was obviously a part of the problem, but it was more just this idea of like we've got to keep conflict going, because that's what good writing is all about. But like there's actually no organic way to do that here, so we're going to have a person behave just a little bit out of character, and my least favorite thing over these last like couple of episodes, actually 3 episodes, was that Devin called Cobell, and kind of like what you said a second ago. On paper, there's a justification that's like, well, she knows that Cobell knows something about this. Cobell is the only person who knows something about this. She's desperate. She's freaking out. Her brother, who she loves, is potentially dying right in front of her eyes. And again, okay, like I follow that logically. And so maybe it's silly to complain about, but I just feel like the character motivation in the scene just feels like the script says that she has to call Cobell, so she calls Cobell.
Yeah.
And that moment actually bothers me more than anything that happened in these last 2 episodes, because that was 3 episodes ago, where it was just it just felt to me like, okay, we got to get Cobell back into this somehow. How are we going to do that? Oh well, Devin has her number in her phone. Oh, perfect.
Yeah. I think it does minimize the immense betrayal of trust Devin felt at realizing that this woman that became her lactation consultant, this incredibly like for those out there that have not had kids or a spouse or partner that has kids, like breastfeeding sucks.
Uh,
Like it's the worst. It's awful, and it's it can be incredibly traumatic and emotional. And Cobell used this as an in to get closer to the family, and Devin felt that betrayal and that anger at that. So yeah, it does kind of stretch her. Like I agree with you generally that I just don't buy that she would be willing to do that. Like it almost needed to come from someone else, and she's like resistant to it and pushing against it, but ultimately sees the value in it, I guess. But for her to be the driving force of it, I agree with you.
yeah, funny because at the time it didn't bother me that much, and then it was one of those things that kind of ate away at me later.
Can we just like nobody does any work anymore? Everyone's just running around on the severed floor, and no, like I guess I like it just feels weird to me that like the kind of throwaway line of we've removed all the cameras and you all have hall passes as like just became an excuse for why they can just kind of do whatever they want on the severed floor now and are not getting chastised for it. And I mean, this doesn't actually bother me that much, but it is just really funny that like when's the last time you saw someone sit at a computer and do work? Um it's funny. It's just funny.
It is funny. I mean, I feel an urge to artist is a genius this one, because the Lumen is your classic tyrannical organization where it is powerful and brittle in equal measure, where like it overstates its power. It's just the perfect encapsulation of this is the interaction between Milchick and the security chief, I guess I forget his name, where the security chief guy is trying to push him around verbally, and Milchick tells him to fuck off basically. And it's great because in that moment you realize how it's a fantastic moment for Milchick, because you and Milchick at the same moment sort of realize how hollow this power structure is, and how it takes all of its power from the idea that they know you're just going to do what they say, regardless of whether it makes any sense. The same thing could even be said for the Ennies to some degree. Like they do all just have the power to leave at any time. So it's the whole show of Severance is many things. One of the things it is kind of a meditation on power structures and how these characters frequently referred to as being prisoners. I hear people talk about them this way, when in reality they can all leave. The only one who really can't leave is Helly, and and we saw why that is. It's because her Audi won't let her. But the others can just quit if they want. But they don't. I mean, until this last episode, actually.
You know what I think about that, Matt?
What do you think about that?
Devour feculence.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
No, you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right, and I think like there has to come a time in like just the function of a show that carries on over multiple episodes, where like we talked about this very early in the season, that like the show was moving away from the isn't corporate life horrifying. The show is moving away from that central conceit, and it needs to, like, that cannot be the show for the entire run of the show. But I think we've seen that fully realized in these last few episodes,
Yeah.
where nobody nobody refines any macro data
Yeah.
anymore. And nobody nobody tells us anything either
Well, it's
anymore.
all going to be revealed in the episode that you and I are currently not watching because we're having this conversation.
Sure, you're right. I'm sure every little thing will be revealed. No, I mean, it's just really interesting because like this is just kind of what happens with television sometimes. Like a thing comes along and you weren't expecting it. You didn't like when Severance premiered. Like no, I wasn't expecting it. It wasn't on like my most anticipated list or anything. It was just, oh, Apple's doing this new thing, and it's got actors I like in it, and I'm going to check it out. And I just became immediately enamored with it. It was shocking. It was surprising in all the best ways, and you fall in love with it. And then the season finale like sticks the landing so hard, is the best episode of the show up until that point. And then suddenly you're like, okay, sophomore year,
Uh-huh.
live up to it. And everything's a little less surprising. It's a little less exciting because you kind of know what you got. You have expectations now. And yeah, I mean, I feel the sophomore slump of the show. Does that mean that the show is bad? No, certainly not. I think this is a very good show. It's impeccably crafted. I can say that, like, just visually, the show is beautiful. It like editing, directing, lighting, cinematography on all points, acting, it is phenomenal. But I just bump up against I find myself continuing to bump up against things
Yeah.
here
I,
as we go down the stretch.
I think a high concept mystery box, mystery oriented show really needs to be like 2 or 3 seasons, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you can't do that. You can't do serialized storytelling where the crux of the thing that we care about is perpetually held at arm's length. And I, I, I wonder. This is what I guess I'm kind of afraid of, the idea that like maybe Apple, maybe the powers that be want this to be a show that just goes on and on and on. And in my mind, I'm like, this show had better have like one more season. And I'm not saying that because I'm not saying that because I want it to end because I don't like it. I'm saying that because I want it to end because I like it, because that will keep it will end, and then it will have a chance of being a thing that told a story and then ended and it was great and everyone loves it forever, as opposed to like season 11 of Severance and you're just like, okay, is anyone still watching this anymore? No, of course not, because it's self-parody at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I don't know what their plan is, if they have one. It hasn't actually been officially greenlit for season 3 yet, by the way. I'm pretty sure Ben Stiller has said the writers' room is being gathered and they're working on it, but it's not officially. It's going to be though. Like this is for Apple, a streaming service that nobody watches. It's doing very, very well.
Right.
They've seen their numbers uptick pretty significantly since the show started airing again. So where there's definitely going to be more, but I agree with your concern there. I also just like, man, not to just make this all complaining, but you remember in episode 3 when we were like, oh wow, they're doing integration this early in the season,
Uh-huh.
and then they just like didn't do that.
Uh-huh.
Like just never, like to the point where there's a whole plot point of this episode where they have to get to the birthing center place to talk to any Mark S to get information from him. And it's like, wasn't that why we did the whole integration plot line? Like,
yeah, well,
I mean, I guess it's going to happen in this finale. Like, and looking back on it, of course it was always going to be in the finale, but it's just like, so like, but I just don't know what's happening with it, right? Like that's the confuse. Like it was starting to happen, but it was going too slow. So we did this thing where we flooded the chip, and then Mark almost died, but then he didn't die, and now he seems like he's okay, but he's still not integrated, and I just don't understand what's happening.
I think the important and confusing thing to remember is that happened like 12 hours ago in Showtime.
Well, okay, sure.
and
but it happened a month and a half
right.
ago in real time.
Yes, which is frustrating. I understand. Like, but that is the way the show did that. Is yes, it felt like we're getting this. So we're going to go somewhere with this, and actually, it was just like we sort of what we really did is we sort of kept like retracing the same 12-hour period with Dylan and with Irv and with Helly and
Hmm.
with Miss Cobell, and that was the whole season. Really, was like that day for all of those characters in
Yeah.
like in parallel, but in series. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now we're finally like back with Mark again for the first time. So
I mean, if that's the case, then Dylan, way too early with the proposal. I mean, I know she is technically your wife already, but you need to chill out there. I jokes aside, like I think that is the one portion of the show that really did work on me. Is that like that heartbreaking moment where Dylan is just like, no, I don't have anything
yeah,
actually. Like I had what, like paper clips or something. He said like
yeah,
he's got nothing, and
yeah,
it's such a because I mean it again. This is where the show is at its best. Like it doesn't even have to particularly say it, but he like gave up fighting for his friend for the benefit of having this, right? Like
right,
in the post, like the memorial for Irving, he was really distraught, but he didn't want to do anything. His friend's last wish was to get the map, and he gave that up for this. And so now, like he feels hurt, he feels betrayed, and he feels like an idiot. And this all leads to him decide that he wants to die, I guess. So I'm I'm conf- have we seen that form before where you can just say I'm gonna quit? I guess Helly does try to do that, right? And it's
yeah,
just like she can't. But
yeah,
like in theory, like Dylan's outie could also just be like, no.
right. He could, and he may like that. Maybe that may be the direction that we go. I think it's. I think everything about that is like my favorite thing. I agree. It's like my favorite thing about the season is all the complexity of this idea that Dylan fell in love with Outie Dylan's wife, and it's the only thing of any meaning he's ever experienced. And in doing that, like the rest of his life became meaningless. And then the thing that she was attracted to in Annie Dillon was that he actually seemed to have meaning in his life, unlike Outie Dillon. And her
Yeah.
very appearance in his life destroyed that meaning.
Yeah.
It's Schrodinger's meaning,
Yeah.
and then he quits, and like Outie Dillon is gonna perceive that and be like, so wait a minute, my Annie killed himself because he couldn't have you, like, and now I'm mad at you for kiss, like it's such a incredibly complex, uh just delightful knot of character
Yeah.
drama.
Yeah. I love it. It's really great. I love the actors that play both Dylan and what's her Gretchen is the wife's name,
Yeah,
maybe something like
yeah,
that. Yeah, I love both of those performances. I think it's great, and unlike the Bert and Irving section, I almost called them Bert and Ernie.
yeah,
I should just call them that.
yeah,
I was incredibly moved by that. I was heartbroken for him, and I also felt her. I felt her confusion and her uncertainty, and like the fact that she does know it's kind of fucked up. But my favorite line, my favorite line in the whole episode though was, "I told you about us,"
yeah,
which is just like only a line that can exist in Severance.
uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, it's great. It's really having fun. I think they're really stretching. There was one when we were like halfway through season 3, and it's not really clear. Sorry, season 1. Well,
Ahead of yourself.
when we were like halfway through season 1, and we were not entirely sure what this show was yet, I remember having this feeling of like, oh, so this could be like an anthology series of sort of little science fiction vignettes playing around with this concept of severance. and maybe we'll pepper in some other little science fiction concepts as we go, and this will be more of like a SCP thing where Severance is just one of the many weird, quirky things that's happening in this complex, and then it became a much more specific and dramatic story than it seemed like it was going to. But for me, the Dylan stuff was kind of a throwback to that feeling where it's like, oh, we're just really exploring what we can do with this premise in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. No, I agree. And there's part of me that, like, as you're explaining that, like, oh yeah, I kind of wish we had just gotten that show. But then we would lose some of the stuff in the show that I really loved. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you take the good with the bad, I think, as you said at the beginning of this conversation. So, yeah. I, I do wonder, like, and this is like also the danger of these kind of mystery box stories where, like, they've put so much on this finale now that, like, I don't know. I really feel like if the finale is just another episode of Severance and not something that makes like a powerful declaration about what the show actually is and what we're doing, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. And like, normally I would say that's my fault, but like, I feel like in this one that's their fault for creating the situation in which the finale has to do all this work. Like, that's, I mean, again, that's one thing that I love so much about the season 1 finale is it just, there was no expectations for what that finale needed to do. Like, it was just this hour of, like, supercharged amazingness that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And now, like, no, and I think a part of it is, like, at the end of season 1, no one's expecting you to get all the answers, right? Like, yeah, I figured maybe they'd answer some stuff, and they do. We learn who their outies are. We get that first glimpse of who their outies are, but that was enough. And now it's like, well, okay, you wrote a bunch of checks over the course of these 9 episodes. It's time.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite, like, little aphorisms of Brandon Sanderson is that writing is all about promise, progress, and payoff, the 3 Ps. And I find this to be a useful, like, diagnostic in this situation because they made a bunch of promises. Like you said, that they wrote a bunch of checks. We haven't seen as much progress, I think, as some people want to see. I'm sort of taking the show on a vibe level where the lack of progress doesn't bother me very much, but I'm capable of simply agreeing that objectively we haven't made a lot of progress. So promises were made, payoff has not occurred. Promises were made, progress is not occurring, payoff is withheld. And and I can see why that's frustrating for people. I reiterate that I am actually still enjoying the show quite a lot, but I definitely hear your complaints.
I mean, part of the reason why I'm so frustrated is because I enjoy so much of the show, actually.
Yeah.
And then I get to the parts that frustrate me, and I'm even more frustrated. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see next week. We'll dive into the finale. I think it's an hour and a half long, so at least it's got enough runway for whatever they need to do to pull this thing off. But yeah, we'll see. So
we
we'll be
will
talking.
See.
I do think, I like talking about all the things that I was frustrated with, and you relating it back to Lost, which is a show I deeply love. Like, you're just right there, but also when you rewatch Lost, knowing all the answers to all the mystery box, you're allowed to just see the show for what it is instead of the show for what it maybe could be tomorrow. And I feel like a very similar thing could happen with Severance, that when I look back at the season, once all is said and done and the show has closed its doors on me, like, I just won't be in this place of, like, well, what do you mean? What is that? Who?
Yeah.
Why? I'll have all those answers, and I'll just get to see the show for just what it is. And like, things like the Cobell episode, and things like the unanswered questions here, and things like the just the general, why didn't you ask that question at that moment, just won't bother me as much anymore.
Yeah, and that's why I like rereading books, is because you're able to set down all of the anxiety and tension around certain questions and luxuriate in all of the other emotions that are available.
Yeah.
and I think it'll be a really. It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. I think I've probably watched the first season like 3 times, and the first season works great on the third viewing. Right, it doesn't rely on you not knowing things. So
Yeah.
hopefully the second season also has that property.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, as my last thing about this, for a person that doesn't like Brandon Sanderson very much, you sure mention him a lot. This is the second time today.
You know, I like Brandon Sanderson as a person who talks about writing quite a lot, honestly.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. That is all we have for you folks this week. If you have any opinions on Invincible or on Severance episode 9, please nothing about the finale quite yet. That's for next week. Please feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com, over on Reddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia, or, you can do it on Instagram at doofmedia, Twitter at doofmedia. I don't think we have a blue sky for this account yet, but you can find us. Just find us.
You can find us. If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, well, there's a great way to do that. You can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and find any of the available pledge levels. There's cool stuff you get at each and every one of them. And the big thing we have this week is our newest episode of 2, a From podcast, another mystery box show that we're watching and talking about episode by episode. The episodes covering season 1, episode 7 and 8 are live now on Patreon, and of course all the ones before that. We're having a great time with that one. Definitely, I guess, comparatively a better time than I'm currently having with Severance, but we're enjoying that show. So come check us out and support us on Patreon.
Yeah, also please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, next week, Severance season 2. I'm going to watch the entire season over again before we record on Thursday. And so I'll be the most knowledgeable Severance person ever. So
awesome.
We'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.